Hi, welcome back to Money Talks with Mia. I'm Mia Lee, escort, stripper, CPA, and recovered banker. Every week, we're going to talk about a new topic that will lead you toward financial independence and wealth building. Before I get started, I just wanted to explain what you're seeing here. If you don't follow me on Instagram, I live streamed the first 3 minutes of some surgery I had to remove my under eye bag. So my eyes are a little bit bruised and puffy. Don't worry, I didn't lose the fight. It was just surgery. Put that out of the way. So today we're going to talk about homeownership. And this is one part of a two-part episode. It's a pretty complex topic, so I broke it down into two for you guys. And the first part of that is just the decision of renting versus buying. For many years, homeownership has been the American dream. And a lot of this changed with our current generation, my generation, certainly of millennials. We're leaning away from big mansions, more toward experiences. Given high homeownership prices, you've probably read a lot in the media of fewer and fewer millennials and Gen Z are buying homes, able to afford homes. That's driven by a lot of factors, including property prices, income adjustments, etc. For this episode, I want to talk about making an informed financial decision to rent versus buy. I'm going to give you a couple of examples to put some numbers to this decision. Homeownership for a lot of Americans is their primary form of wealth accumulation. The equity that a lot of Americans have in their home that they own is a significant or only source of their net worth. I don't want to discount that. I'm going to give one example of purchasing a home in a lower cost of living area, basically outside of the large coastal cities, based on the median US home price. And I'm going to give another example of renting versus buying where I live in New York City, where cost of living is very, very high. According to Zillow.com, the median home price in the United States is approximately $350,000. We're going to use $350,000 as our example and benchmark for how much you have to put down and what you would have to pay monthly to own that home. Going with this $350,000 home price example, you are actually looking at more than putting 20% down. So of course your down payment is going to be 20%, which is $70,000. And you want to put down 20% because you don't want to pay PMI or private mortgage insurance because that cost is going to be rolled into your mortgage. And often if you don't have a 20% down payment, you're probably not in a position to buy, with very few exceptions. I would encourage everyone to buy with 20% down, but that's only $70,000. I'm actually telling you that you need approximately $100,000 down to buy a $350,000 home. Where's the gap? That gap is going to be two things mainly. One is going to be minor renovation costs like painting and whatnot. Most homes that you buy at that price range are not going to be 100% turnkey, and you're realistically going to want to budget for some minor home renovations, even if it's just painting and changing doorknobs. These are costs that can kind of trip you up if you're not expecting them, but probabilistically you're going to have some of these. You're also going to have another $10,000 to $15,000 in moving costs, furniture costs, etc., because you're not going to move into an empty house. If you were previously living in an apartment, you're probably going to need more furniture. You're going to want to invest in some other things in addition to minor renovations to make your home your own. When we add all of this together, $70,000 down payment, $15,000 for minor renovations, and another $15,000 for furniture and moving costs, you're looking at about $100,000. Now let's talk about your monthly carrying costs. Your carrying costs are not just your mortgage. Your carrying costs are your total home expenditure cash outlay every month. You're probably looking at $2,500 a month. But $1,900 of that is going to be your mortgage payment. I'm using current mortgage rates at about 7% for a 30-year fixed mortgage. You're also going to have another $400, give or take, in taxes, property taxes. I'm assuming that your property taxes are about 1.5%. Obviously, that's going to change depending on where you live. At 1.5% in property taxes, you're looking at an additional $400 a month for property taxes. You're also going to have homeowners insurance. You might not currently have renter's insurance, but you absolutely should and will have to have homeowners insurance. Homeowners insurance for a $350,000 home, again, depending on your area, might go up or down, is going to run you another $200 a month. We add that $400, $200, $600 into the $1,900 a month, you're looking at $2,500 a month to own a $350,000 home. Let's talk about the pros and cons of homeownership versus renting. As I mentioned before, homeownership is value accretive, meaning you are building wealth, you're gaining equity in your home. The more you pay down the principal on your home, the more equity you're accruing in your home. If your home value goes up, you are going to be building equity in your home. Home equity is the value of your home less the mortgage that you owe on that home or any debt that you have against your home. Cool thing about home equity is that you can actually use that as kind of an emergency savings fund if you end up in a tight spot, because you can take out a tax-free loan against the equity of your home is called a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. You can use that as kind of an emergency fund once you've built up some equity in your home. That's another financial consideration in home ownership that you don't get from renting. And you also get some tax benefits from home ownership. Under most circumstances, with some exceptions, your mortgage interest is going to be deductible, whereas your rent is not deductible. This is probably the point in the video where you're like, why would anyone want to waste money on rent when they could just own a home? I'm going to use myself as an example here of a situation where, given my life circumstances and the area I live in and the property values in my area and the carrying costs of a home in my area comparable to what I'm renting, it doesn't really make sense for me to buy. I gave you this $350,000 example based on a US median. Now, everybody knows that the cost of living in cities like New York and San Francisco and LA are much, much higher than the median home value in most of the rest of the country. I currently live in Manhattan. It's a very high cost of living area. It's also a part of the world where property values are incredibly high, and they've been driven even higher by things like a shortage of housing and interest rates that affect everybody. But interest rates are affecting New York home values in a slightly different and more compounding way, such that in an area that already has a housing shortage, we're compounded by the fact that many people are currently in a position where they can't afford to move because they can't afford to take on a new mortgage, so they're not selling their homes. Home inventories are very, very depressed and limited, so there's very little liquidity in the home buying market in New York City right now, and that's probably true of many high cost of living cities. Putting some numbers to this, I currently pay about $8,500 a month in rent for my 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment in my area of New York. It's a brand new building. It's beautiful. I have wonderful amenities. They're probably like, Mia, you're a complete moron. Why do you pay so much in rent? You're just throwing your money away. Well, we need to consider opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is an economic term for the next best thing you could buy or the next best thing you could spend that money on. The first opportunity cost I want to talk about is the down payment plus cost at closing. For New York City, I live in a 2,000 square foot 2-bedroom apartment with 2 bathrooms, and my apartment is roughly 2,000 square feet. The average price per square foot of property in New York City is $1,500 per square foot, and that's much higher than most other parts of the world. For me, it would cost at least $3 million for me to buy a unit that is similar to what I'm living in now. And realistically, it's even higher because I live in a new construction building, I have amenities, and my area is relatively expensive, so it's probably even more, but we're just gonna go with a $3 million example to make the math a little bit simpler for demonstrative purposes. If I buy a $3 million home, I'm looking at $600,000 down for my down payment alone. And with the other expenses that I talked about, given the cost of living in my area and the cost of stuff in my area and services and labor, I'm probably looking at another $250,000 for things like minor renovations, design costs, furniture. Realistically, I'm looking at putting $850,000 down before I've made a single monthly payment just to own a home that is similar to what I'm renting now. The opportunity cost of that for me, given my circumstances, is that I could take that money and invest it in the stock market. I could buy index funds. And right now, interest rates are very high, home values are very high. The market has been very, very strong in the last 2 quarters of 2023. I basically made 25% 2023 investing in the stock market. That's liquid gains, meaning I can sell those stocks and index funds anytime I want to, and I can take that cash gain. I made $170,000 in the stock market by not putting $850,000 into a down payment for a home. But the finance geeks watching this are gonna be like, well, it's not really apples to oranges because your home value might increase only 4%, but that's levered, meaning I have it against a mortgage, so I didn't have to outlay $3 million up front. When you factor in the leverage, you're actually getting your 20%. And you're not wrong, but we do have to factor in the fact that property is an illiquid asset, meaning you can't just buy and sell on a whim. I can buy and sell stocks and index funds at my leisure for any reason at any time. That's a very liquid asset, and those are very liquid gains or losses. Whereas if I pump that money into a home, my home is not a liquid asset. So if anything were to happen, or if I would want to use that money to invest in my business or invest in something else, I can't just snap my fingers and sell my home right away. 1, because of the liquidity in the market. 2, because there are very significant transaction costs like brokerage fees, buying and selling a home, that would not allow me to realize the full value of my home and the full potential gain or loss in my home. So it would exacerbate a loss if my home value went down, and it would decrease a gain if my home were to appreciate in value. I am much more interested in the liquid $170,000 that I made in the market with what would have been my down payment. So now let's talk about the carrying costs. These are going to be very sticker shocking to most of you who don't live in a high cost of living area. The way property values shake out in a city like New York, in the areas of New York that I like to live in, I would be paying, just for my mortgage alone at 7% on a $3 million home, assuming I put 20% down, my mortgage payment alone is going to be $16,000 a month. It's already almost double what I'm paying in rent. I'm also going to have condo association fees, property taxes, heating costs, maintenance costs. Once I factor all of that in, I'm really looking at a total monthly carrying cost of about $25,000 a month. I would have to pay $16,500 more every single month to own the unit that I am living in now versus just paying that in rent. And when we think about opportunity cost, that's $16,500 that I can't invest in my business, invest in the stock market, do whatever the hell else I want with. That's not a very good deal for me right now. Many of these things might change. My life circumstances might change. Maybe I get married and my partner and I want to buy a home that's really our own, and that's not necessarily as much of a financial decision as an emotional decision. Maybe property values will go down, inventory will go up, and maybe interest rates will go down, so that carrying cost to rent cost multiple might decrease. I might make a different choice at some point in my life, or maybe I'll leave New York, and then the math would change substantially. For now, this is a pretty good example of why it makes sense for me to rent versus buy. That's all I've got for you on renting versus buying. Tune in next week, follow, like, comment. I'm gonna be talking next week about what you need to do to prepare for homeownership, so that's the second part of my home buying two-part episode. I am Mia Lee. Thank you so much for listening. You can take the girl off Wall Street, but you can't take the banker out of the whore. Please leave me your comments, questions, suggestions for future episodes.